Okay, everyone. My name is Victoria Saucedo. I am the current Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer for the Judy Nicholson Foundation. And tonight, this is our Young Voices on Kidney Cancer panel that we are hosting for the month of March. We are excited to welcome everyone tonight to our panel. And we'd especially like to extend a thank you to our two sponsors for tonight, which is Merck Pharmaceuticals and Exelixis. They provide a lot of support for our foundation that allows us to host educational programs like this panel tonight. So our next topic leads us into the broader question of awareness, and I'd like to hear from Katie and Sid for this next question. Do y'all think there's a need for greater awareness or earlier detection methods that are specifically geared towards younger people? And if so, how would y'all advocate for this? Katie, would you like to start us off?
Sure. And I probably will have a very different answer than I think what most people would expect, especially given my circumstances and how long it took me to get diagnosed. If you would have asked me this question 4 years ago, I would have said, yes, everyone should be screened. Like, as soon as you have a problem, do an ultrasound, get a CT scan, do it immediately. My opinion has definitely changed over the years, and that comes from learning a little bit more about diagnostics, about the risks that come with it. I myself even also had a small, benign, we don't even know what to call it. I live in the world of rare, but small benign mass that was found more or less incidentally in my bladder after my diagnosis that I had to go through surveillance for and that I had to have removed. And that might not have ever been found, but there could have been complications for that. I also had an internal bleed from a biopsy in my liver before. And so I know that there's risks when you find things, and incidental findings on scans are actually pretty common. And so for me, what I would actually love to see more than just sending everybody through a scan, because it can catch so many incidental things. And even scanning myself over 4.5 years, I've seen things that pop up and then resolve on their own. So I've learned the nuance that comes from just image modality. What I would love to see is more biomarker blood-based testing. And I think that would be more accessible for a lot more people. And I also think it would help both in the metastatic setting as well as earlier stage patients. So in my opinion, at the very beginning of my diagnosis, I probably really would have advocated for imaging, like just put everybody through a scan. But I think more and more I'm shifting to, I would love to see more blood-based biomarkers developed. And I do think earlier stage patients can contribute to that. Starting biobanks. I know so many patients that probably would be more than happy to run down and give a vial of their blood in order for that to be studied. And I do think that we have a power of being younger and more connected through technology to really amplify efforts like this. In my personal opinion, that's where I would love to see the advocacy go a little bit more.
Thank you. Sid?
Yeah, I don't know how I'm supposed to answer after Katie because she touched on what I was going to say. So I will also reiterate that when we're talking about biomarkers, I think something that isn't touched on sometimes is accessibility, and that the biomarkers that does allow much easier accessibility for folks. And I will also, there'll be a point that I'll make as well that's separate from Katie's, but also when talking about scans, I follow that same pattern as well, even though it has only been a little bit over a year since I was diagnosed. I too would just, hey, let's just throw everybody through a machine and see what we pick up and let's see what happens. But I have learned very quickly, even though I have not had as many scans as some other folks, that our bodies are filled with a whole bunch of stuff that we just, who knows? But the key is having great doctors and radiologists that know exactly what the bad things are and what the things we really don't need to worry about are. We are human though, so when we see something on our reports that isn't supposed to, or when we see something on our report that doesn't say unremarkable, we tend to worry. Also, something that I would love to see more of, and this is something that I don't know if we can just snap our fingers and improve overnight, but when I tell people my story of how I was diagnosed, or kind of those first couple of days, I always touch on the fact that I had a really strong relationship with my primary care physician before this happened. I know I'm very familiar with Katie's story, and that I know Katie had gone to clinics and stuff. And I could only imagine how stressful that is, because with me, I simply walked into my PCP's office and I said, hey, I don't think something's right here. I was urinating blood and I think we should get a CT scan done. And I think we had already had this relationship established that, he knew that I wouldn't just ask for that just willy nilly. So I would love to see more of those relationships bloom. And I don't know the answer of how that happens, because we live in a world where there are biases. People aren't taken as seriously, especially folks our age, and especially women as well. A lot of times women will walk into the doctor's office and they'll just say, "Oh, you're being over dramatic," or "Oh, is it?" But at the end of the day, like, those relationships, I think, will benefit patients across the board, because that's usually where a lot of patients kind of first start in their journey. A lot of times they don't go to the ER straight. Sometimes it'll be a doctor that'll say, "Hey, let's get a CT done because this just doesn't seem normal." And then one other thing too, that I think, just awareness. I think one trap that we sometimes get into is we'll say, "I got asked the other day, what were your signs and symptoms?" And I had really no signs or symptoms besides I literally woke up one morning and I urinated blood. My blood work was always normal. My kidney function was normal. I think Anna Maria touched that her kidney function, there was some abnormal values there. I never had abnormal values. I tend to sometimes err on the side of caution that, yes, if something doesn't seem normal, you need to get it checked out. But I think sometimes if I tell somebody, "Hey, like I had flank pain," all of a sudden, everybody who might have pulled a muscle, they might just freak out and say, "Hey, I have kidney cancer." Because you do see that, right? Like we are human and we do that. But I would wholeheartedly agree, though, with Katie, that biomarkers would be something that I would love to see come to fruition. And I think there are some promising things out there. We're not there quite yet, obviously, but I think that would be very beneficial to accessibility and to folks that maybe can't just go find somewhere to get scanned. Because a lot of folks live in medical deserts where they don't have access to. I live 25 minutes away from Vanderbilt, from Nashville. So it's very easy for me to say, "Hey, go get a scan," but not everybody has that accessibility.
Thank y'all for sharing that.